I started a journey with following the advice of my cardiologist buddy who said, do everything the doctors tell you to do, and then pursue any kind of spiritual solution you want. Just do both things in both tracks. And so that's exactly what I did. And so I did chemotherapy, and I eventually had a bone marrow transplant. At the same time, I was going to all these places where these healers were, and I saw amazing things happen, which I never would have considered before. I mean, it was way outside of, I mean, I'm a minister, but it's way outside of my radar screen. And um, uh, things happened to me, and so um, it was a wild ride, concluding in 2010 when I was cured. I'm not in remission; it's over.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, thanks for listening in to The Exploding Human. I'm Bob Nickman. Glad you're here. The gentleman you heard at the beginning there is Don Mulford, my guest today. He is a minister who has a story of healing through prayer. More about that in a second. First, I want to invite you guys to check out my website, theexplodinghuman.com. TheExplodinghuman.com, and you can see my guests' photos there, bios on my guests, a little bio on myself, and there is a donate button if you'd care to support the show. I would really appreciate that. Also, please subscribe for free, of course, to my YouTube channel, which is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Add the with Bob Nickman, and you'll find that on YouTube. So my guest today, Don Mulford, this was a really great thing. He contacted me out of I guess he did a little search on the internet and thought the show would be good for promoting his book and his message. And I said, yeah, let's just do it, man. I didn't even talk to him first. He sent me this email. I said, yeah, let's do it, and I'm so glad I did. His book is called Matchbooks in the Tunnel, How God and Others Solved My Impossible Problem, Cancer. And Don's story, he is a minister, and he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they gave him about 10 years to live, something like that, 10, 12 years. And he not only pursued the medical type cures, but he also pursued healers, and is now completely free of the cancer. He's not in remission. He does not have it. And he is going to talk to us about that long 10-year period of how he sought out various healers, and through the use of prayer was able to overcome this cancer. And he has some other stories about other folks and some of the names of the healers he went to. And he's a great guy, great sense of humor. I love talking to him. So here he is. This is Don Mulford. Before the podcast started, we were talking about the spiritual approach to religion, or the religious approach to spirituality. That's what we were deciding. How Don approaches his life a little bit, because then we're going to get into your cancer survivor stuff.
You're the first person who ever characterized it as that, and it completely nails it. The mantra, which is overstating it, but is true largely in our culture, is I'm spiritual, not religious. And I think that's a fascinating statement by a culture and by individuals who say that. to readily admit that they are spiritual. That's relatively new to just we all, admit, hey, I'm spiritual. That used to not be said or that openly stated in any way. My parents' generation's religion was a personal thing. You don't talk politics, you don't talk sex, you don't talk religion. Now it's the opposite in terms of spirituality, and so um, it allows for a lot of conversation, which is very healthy, especially right now where the world is today, to uh, look at, consider, and even talk over, even with people you don't know well, the spiritual aspect, the spirituality of what's going on today, apart from saying, this is what I believe, this is sort of the way to go, and let me help you find a way to what I believe because I'm here to help you do that. People will listen to what you believe if you're not there to tell them to do it. And so, in having this generic topic of spirituality to as the entry point, then it allows for really great conversations about even God and how we deal with the deepest feelings and deepest needs that we have. So it's a good place to be.
Yeah, what I like about that approach is that it's one of attraction rather than trying to promote something that, this is the way you got to do it.
Absolutely.
That's the first thing when I hear something like that. I'm like, see you later.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
run the other way when somebody is super dogmatic. I just don't want, I don't, even if they're right, they're not just
Yeah,
because of the
that's right.
dogma. So,
That's another great statement. You're right. I mean, they may be right, but by being dogmatic about it, they're wrong.
well, yeah, because, forcing something that is very personal onto somebody else is a very presumptuous and arrogant approach to anything,
Exactly.
at least for me. So I appreciate that you're. I know you're a minister, and did you train in a certain discipline, or what is your ministering, as if that's a word? What is that like? What how does that work for you?
I don't know what you mean, but no, actually, I graduated from college, was interested in really generally more spiritual, but ministry, but didn't know exactly what that looked like, and it was very ethereal. And then I also looked at the more practical, which was law, and I chose law, which was a good choice at that time because it was more hands-on, specific, practical. And as opposed to all the lectures I sat through in college, it taught me how to think. So it was a gift because it helped me to become more articulate about thoughts. And then now, when I moved into pursuing my spiritual dream, and I finally left law in my 30s and went back to theology school to become a minister. I was able to be a lot more articulate about these very ethereal thoughts, and that was very helpful. So I did that and took the journey to uh, find a place to do ministry, but it seemed the only thing I could really find besides being a missionary overseas was to be a minister in a church. So I had to join a denomination, and so I joined the Presbyterian Church, and that was a great place to be, great people, and was a good. You have to sort of come from somewhere, and you
Mhm.
can't come from nowhere, and so it provided some um, structure of my theological thought, and um, the Presbyterian format, which is basically, simply put, the word presbyter in Greek, the Bible means elder. And so it's a church system, denomination run by a whole bunch of elders in forms of committees. So it's a church of committees. And um, that was the model that was used to set up the United States government. They have these systems of overseeing groups and committees, and so it was a good place to be. And so I finally found a church, and I was happy in that role. and then I got sick, and so that changed everything. And what happened is that um, very soon after my diagnosis, which was a complete shock, I was 48 of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is terminal. And they said it was stage 4, the highest stage, and so they said you have 11 or 12 years to live. Um, there was a healer who had an international reputation. And it was controversial. His name is Benny Hinn, and he was coming to Oakland. He went anywhere in the world, and he was coming to Oakland, 10 miles from where I live, a few months after my diagnosis. And so I went to that gathering, and there were thousands, thousands of people there. And it was a real trip because the uh, meeting was held in the Oakland Arena, which is where the Warriors play, right next to where the Raiders played. And I grew up going to Raider games. And so I had a lot of history in the Oakland Coliseum, Oakland Arena. And here I am there for a very different reason and this spiritual reason. And this man comes out and he gives a teaching. And then these people just start coming up saying I was healed. You know, I couldn't move my back. I couldn't stand up. And they're on this cane. And they threw the cane away. Um, and there were so many of them. And it was the way it went. It just wasn't phony. And then I eventually talked to somebody later who I know who traveled with Benny Hinn for 7 years and did the logistical stuff. And so he saw this night after night.
Can you say his name again?
Sure.
Because is it
Benny, yeah, it's Benny Hinn, Hinn.
Hinn? What is he? A certain nationality?
He's Middle Eastern.
Okay, all right. I'd
And
never heard that name before. It's an interesting name, Hinn.
Exactly. Um, and so this friend who traveled with him said these people really get healed. So I started a journey with following the advice of my cardiologist buddy who said, do everything the doctors tell you to do, and then pursue any kind of spiritual solution you want. Just do both things in both tracks. And so that's exactly what I did. And so I did chemotherapy, and I eventually had a bone marrow transplant. At the same time, I was going to all these places where these healers were, and I saw amazing things happen, which I never would have considered before. I mean, it was way outside of, I'm a minister, but it's way outside of my radar screen. And um, things happened to me. And so um, it was a wild ride, concluding in 2010 when I was cured. I'm not in remission. It's over. So it was quite a journey.
Do you even get tested anymore, or you're just
I don't.
You're done with all that? Do you know who your donor is?
My brother.
Oh, okay, that's even better.
Yeah, I had a perfect match, and so that helped. But I had I was diagnosed in '99, had the transplant in '06, and it failed in '09.
Oh,
And so they just gave me a little bit more of his donation, but not with all the rigmarole with it. It was just a flyer. It was a Hail Mary. Um, and I found somebody else who had prayed for her little boy who had died, and she prayed him back to life. And she happened to be in the Bay Area again, and we spent time together. And she taught me how to pray a certain way. And there was a day in my apartment where I was praying. I could feel God's spirit come in and just take the cancer away. And I went back to the doctors, and it was gone. So it's a crazy story. I wouldn't believe it.
well, I think a lot of people aren't going to believe it. They're going to go, okay, this is like, what is this?
And exactly, which I totally get. I totally get.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disbelieve anything. If somebody tells me that's their story, well, that is their story.
That's their story.
You don't want anything other than to say, here's my story and check it out, take it or leave it. And
that's right.
The type of prayer that you were doing, can you describe that in any way? I mean, because it is so personal and it's so.
Sure.
It's not like I said these 5 words in this order. It's not like that. I realize that, but is there something that as somebody who prays might find an additional emphasis?
It helps with the context. I had been now on this road for 10 years when I found her. I had gone to this little church that was near my place, and they had a little service, and they said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to show this video of this woman." So I go watch the video. There's five of us watching the video. I mean, there's completely nothing big about it or exciting or
Mhm.
anything that you would think that would make it like it was this was going to work. Um, and she's not on some big stage somewhere. She's just in a church service that's telling what happened. And she was like in her 30s, and she and her husband went out to dinner, left the boy with the 2-year-old with the grandparents on a farm, and they let the boy out and he drowned. So they call them up and they race to the hospital, and they're on, it's in Canada, and they're on all the medical tubes and stuff. And but he's gone. And she starts praying, and immediately his vitals come back on. But that's all. So she just moves into the ICU with him, and it's just praying over him constantly and all. And within 5 days, he wakes up, but he's still brain dead, but he's awake. And so, I'm sorry, 9 days later. And that takes another 2 weeks, and then he walks out of the hospital normal. That's the story. And so now for 10 years, I've been going to this stuff and I've been fighting cancer, and I maxed out on my chemo. I could not have any more. Um, had a bone marrow transplant. I'm tired. Um, but, and he just told me the bad news, the bone marrow transplant failed. So what do I have to lose? And they said, and she's down the street in Sunnyvale, and she's going to start teaching next week. This is like Benny Hinn. He could be anywhere in the world, but he's in Oakland. Now, she was in Canada. What's she doing in Sunnyvale? And next week. So I go down there, and she does her teaching, and then I go talk to her, and I look her in the eye, and there's no con, that it happened. And the little boy's running around. I meet him. He's now 6. It's 4 years later. Um, and so she taught me to pray this, which I'd never heard before, that there's a verse in the Bible and called 2 Timothy 3:16, which says that all scripture, the Bible, is inspired by God. So, okay, God inspired the writers to write the Bible. Got it. Well, she said, beyond that, the word inspired means inspiration, means in spirit, means you're putting spirit in. So you're literally, through these people writing the stuff down, we're putting God's spirit into the words themselves. They are like carriers of the spirit. Like, okay. Um, so when you quote the words over and over, not crazy mantra, but just, repeat them a few times, it releases in the state of prayer, releases the spirit. Um, okay, I'll try it. So I would pray, and then I would start quoting these scriptures like, by his stripes I am healed, by the stripes of Jesus, by his death on the cross, I am healed. And so the power of that supposedly would be released. And so in doing this for days and days, for a few minutes at a time, nothing wild. I wasn't fasting. I wasn't, going out in the sun or anything. Um, Things have started to change. I could just feel it was like, in the cartoon, you got the circle above the head where the words are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
The thought balloon.
thought balloon.
Yeah.
I could feel the spirit in the thought balloon, and I could feel where the cancer was around my gut. And over time, I could feel the two merge. And then, you have to realize I've been doing this for a decade, so I'm in an altered state. I'm in a place of great desperation. I'm in a place of great spiritual sensitivity because that's what I'm focusing on. And so I could just sense deep within me that it had changed, that the spirit had overtaken the cancer. And so it just, I wasn't like, it's done. I know it's done. It was more like, wow, I wonder if it's done. And so then I went to the doctors and it was gone. So the prayer was simply finding verses that applied to my problem, and then, with a sense of faith that God's with me and God blesses these words, just saying them out loud, in private, and no big deal. But just sort of keep doing that for a while and do it through the days. Something shifts in the spirit realm. So that's what happened.
Wow. But so it really is the words repeated and the focus, and but you said faith, and what about people that might not have faith? Where does that come from? Some of it, I think, is probably from desperation. I think that opens up a certain channel to whatever's available because, like you said, I had nothing to lose, so there was a certain amount of desperation there. Do you think people can get to that without the desperation? I mean, it seems to me. I know that I do better. Uh, Better is probably not the right word. I'm more open to things when I'm a little more desperate. I'm less arrogant and I'm a little bit more open to things if I'm feeling like, oh gosh, I have no options here. I better try this other thing.
Absolutely. When we come to a place of not having enough, of getting to the end of our resources, of becoming spiritually poor, out of gas, desperate, um, then we are more open. Then we move down. If we don't cover it up, we don't stuff it with something that can even just be TV or too much exercise, but instead allow admitting that, I'm really struggling inside here. I don't know why, there's something missing, all that stuff, that deep existential experience. Um, then we are more open to the move of things spiritual. And we're more open to God doing something unusual and talking to us and doing stuff. Uh, so um, that definitely was my situation when 10 years of being desperate. So I was acutely sensitive and very desperate. In the Bible, Jesus healed 22 people. All of them were desperate. They were homeless people on the side of the road. A woman who was hemorrhaging uncontrollably for years, spent all her money on doctors. She was busted. She was toast. Um, a guy whose daughter was dying and then died. Those are the people who got their prayer answered because they came and they realized he's got something. He can do this. And so he said, it was your faith in me, really, that healed you. It wasn't just me just saying something over you. Um, as opposed to the guy known as the rich young ruler who was very wealthy, well off, things going well, living a good life, got everything he wanted, but realized he had a spiritual need. So he went to Jesus and he said, I want to know what you got to offer, but I've got it, like, can we get together tomorrow from 2 to 4? I've got that carved out of my calendar. Otherwise, I'm a very busy guy. And Jesus basically said to him, that's just not how it works. You have to realize, you don't have anything that you're looking for from all this other stuff. So you hit it right on the head.
I have a constant sort of push and pull inside my head of wanting and believing in something bigger, and also this sort of negative side, a for lack of a better word, a practical side, quantitative kind of a thing where I'm going, yeah, that's ridiculous. I'm not doing that. There is no something bigger. There is, that, and I'm sure as somebody who's, lived this kind of a life that you've fought that, and I'm sure that, well, I'm not sure because I don't know you that well, but here's the thing: I'm sick now, like you're saying, I'm sick. um, did you ever rail against the unfairness of that and be angry and think like, I just got screwed big time, I'm too young for this bullshit, and I want to screw God, there is no God. Did you? I always am curious about people that, you know, go more toward the spiritual side, because I think a lot of people think that those people aren't questioning enough. I don't see you as that person. I see you as somebody that probably did quite a bit of that, and maybe had and maybe still has at times an internal struggle with which direction do I really want to focus on. I mean, obviously you've gotten a tremendous results from the direction you've chosen, but prior to that, like when you got the diagnosis, and maybe I don't know what your personal life was like with friends and relationships and things like that. I'm curious to see where you came from prior. That interests me a lot, just to know who was Don before this, thing hit.
Those are great questions, and so those are like three different questions. So
Yeah, I
I
went
may,
all over the place. Sorry.
yeah, so I can't answer. No, I'm confused.
You know what, Bob? The heck with
Yeah,
you.
but I'd like to help you out. So the first thought is, yeah, um, we do have, and it's especially when you're in the ministry, spiritual business, the whole idea is about questing for more. There's a hunger in the human soul for more, and that's valid. And there is the practical side. My dad grew up real poor. He had to fight his way out of grinding poverty and all the rest. And so he and I did not see eye to eye on this. I'm trying to pursue the spiritual journey, and he's great, and that's fine. What do you do for money? And so there is the practical side of life. So how do you do with the tension of that? And the brief answer to that I found is, the scripture says we're made in the image of God, so we have a hunger for God. We are made to have a hunger for more. We're not made to simply live the life works out and we're done. We still have to do the pragmatic stuff and put food on the table at the same time, continue that quest. And so that's what a spiritual pursuits and disciplines are all about, is doing that while you're taking care of yourself. So that's a very valid thing to do. And then the questioning with God, why me and what's the deal? It did come out of who I was before. I had always been, as a little child, I believed in God and I always sort of sensed God's presence. It wasn't a big leap for me to, it was more of a, oh, of course. My mother was that way. I just sort of caught it from her. And
Mhm.
so um, I somehow got the idea that, this isn't some a carnival we're living in, that life has challenges and there's this God who loves us and is with us. And so I sort of somewhere knew that. And then I just went on with my life. But I always had the side of me that was doing my God thing and doing the spiritual stuff just so I could, this is who I was. The first chapter of my book is called The Bomb. And because when I hung up the phone, it was like a bomb. I mean, I knew I had cancer. So I was blasted. Um, but I sensed a, a presence of God, which helped, and I knew there was this ultimate thing about going to heaven, and I knew that I had God's presence with me. I'd known that throughout my life, so that sustained me rather than I completely fell apart. But I
Mhm.
still went to support groups, and I have stories I tell in the book that I won't tell you now, but um, the first one was, it didn't work at all, and then the second one I found was great, and that really sustained me. So I had this group of people who were all sick, and we all encouraged each other. But I still had this moment about 4 months after I was diagnosed, where I was sitting in a car on a mall, and the sun's going down. The mall looks faded and bland, and the cars are empty, and I thought it's a perfect metaphor for me because I feel faded and bland. And I had a conversation with God. What's the deal? And I did not get an answer like this is the reason you're getting this or anything, but I did get a sense very quietly, but very perceptively and very tangibly, God's presence and this sense of I'm, with you, and we'll do this. We'll get through this. So and then I went home and I started, and these are again the wild things that I never would believe happened to anybody, but I started looking forward to nighttime, which you think would be the worst time. I turned it to the best time because I could literally feel Jesus's arms around me when I'd get into bed, and I would sleep like a baby. I slept great for years. I had some medication which helped, but it still. And so I kept my sanity pretty much. So that's how I got past the um, this is so unfair, and I'm so mad at God. And
When you were talking about being a child and always knowing that there was something more in that,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
I had this experience as a kid that sometimes you have these heightened moments
that's
when
right.
you're a kid and you don't know where it comes from or what's going on, and it was a moment when I was just laying down in the grass looking up at the
Mm,
clouds, and my mind started to go into the clouds. I became like
mm,
I was in there,
yeah, yeah,
and I was like, I'm not separate from this. I'm part of it. There's something else going on here besides what I'm being told to eat your
yeah,
vegetables, go clean your room, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, whoa. And I remember it kind of freaked me out. I had to sort of stop because it became too vast, but it was incredible. And I remember thinking there's something else here, but I'm not going to be able to talk about it with anybody because they probably haven't experienced it, and maybe I'm a little strange or whatever it was. But it was this, I guess, a knowing was kind of what it was. And then when I uh, was a little bit older, well, a lot older, I was in college, and I had talked about, I'd read a lot of spiritual books and talked philosophy with people. And this friend of mine told me this quote from Albert Einstein, and I'm probably going to, I'm sure it's not accurate, but it's something like, we dance to a strange and distant tune.
mm,
And that made sense to me much more than any kind of religious
yeah.
dogma. And I was like, yeah, I mean, and then even the analogy of music, like, where does that come from? And then I started to think about maybe it doesn't come from anywhere. Maybe it just is, and we tap into it because it's already there. And there is no such thing as creating music. It's just tapping into the music that's already there. So I had that discussion with a couple of people,
Mm,
and that to me is what we're talking about: is
yeah, yeah.
this force, this energy, this thing that pre-exists my physical body, that's gonna keep going after my body is not around, and it's just something that is so strong and powerful.
That experience with the clouds is much more readily accepted these days. The It's a transformative experience. It's a really a supernatural experience, and nature is it. Scripture says nature is God's handiwork. It's God making this environment for us in which to experience God's presence. God isn't the cloud, but God's presence is in the cloud.
Yeah,
And so that side of us, humans are minds and emotions and the rest, but also we're spirit. We need to allow for that side to get out and to engage and one of the things I learned and during my time of illness was there's always more to be honest and authentic with ourselves, using our real voice for this connects with me. So I'm going to pursue that and I'm going to learn more about that. I mean, Jesus said, seek and you'll find, keep seeking, keep looking, keep going. Um, So do more of that.
I probably should have talked about this up front, but and I will in the intro. But let's talk about your book, the title, where people can get it, because let's promote something great here.
Thank you. Yeah, I entitled it Matchbooks in the Tunnel, and then the subtitle I should start with, because that makes sense. How God and Others Solved My Impossible Problem, and then cancer in parentheses. And the idea is this was my experience, my story, so it involved cancer, but the book really applies to more than simply being sick. It applies to when we're struggling with the problems that seem impossible in life. This is one person's journey on lessons learned, experiences had that um, can really be helpful. And the reason I called it Matchbooks in the Tunnel is because when I was growing up, my dad was in politics, and so he had all those back. This was back when smoking still was in, and those little matchbooks with the
Yep,
matches, and so
I
you
love those things with the
you
little wooden matches in them, or you're
little
talking about the soft ones
the
that. Yeah,
cardboard, yeah.
yeah, I remember those in my mom's cigarette pack. They would fit
Exactly, just slide right
into
in.
the cellophane, and you could carry it together.
Exactly, it was the whole way of life. So he just had cartons of the boxes of the matchbooks in the garage. And so we had a tunnel that ran under the streets of where I lived. So I would take a bunch of these matches and go into the tunnel and light them. So it was like, instead of a flashlight, it was much more adventurous. So it was like a torch, and
Uh huh.
the light would work for a while and then it'd go out and you light the next one. And so that was the perfect metaphor for entering into the darkness with my light. It describes just the 11 years of the diagnosis and then these crazy things that happen, and the lessons learned.
Wow, that's an incredibly long time. It's a
Yeah,
decade of
it was a long
wow,
time.
man. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it was a long time.
yeah. I like that you're laughing about it now. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to cry when this is over, but
I
no.
hope so. That's what I tell people. Go, oh, yeah, you seem like you're in a good mood. Yeah, but I'm going to be crying
Yeah,
myself.
yeah. It's not really me. That's just
That's the public face.
yeah,
I always, what I ask. I always like to ask people that. What do you like in your quiet moments when no one's around?
yeah, right, exactly.
Because sometimes it's not so great. Sometimes it
Yeah.
is.
No, I still laugh when I'm alone.
Yeah, I do too.
The more we get spirituality, the more fun we have really in life. The thing about religion is, um, you have a bunch of people that get together that are trying to do something good. I mean, there's a few weirdos out there, but the vast majority of people around the world who are involved with religion, whatever it is they're trying to walk with God, and they're trying to do it in an organized fashion. And anytime you put people together, you got to get organized. And when you get organized, you come up with the rules, and then you're making rules about God. So you want to be part of this team. There's the old comic of a guy finally gets found on the desert island, and there's two buildings and there's two churches, and so that he was alone there. And so they say, well, what are those? He goes, well, that's the church where I go. Well, what's the other one? Well, that's the church where I used to go. So, that's not that inaccurate. And so it's very, what I realized when I was studying in theology school is, why do people get so upset about such little things, or they get so convoluted and so much down a rabbit trail, and they're offending everybody, um, because they haven't worked through their own journey that well, and they entered into it. They like this faith group they're with. It's doing something for them. It's helping them, but they haven't worked it all through. And now we're trying to do some stuff together. And so, well, I'm sort of coming from here, and you're coming from here, and you're coming from here, and so we don't agree. And so what's happening is, it's not so much, okay, do we meet at 9 or 8? It's that it's threatening my very sense of understanding of the core values of this whole faith group. And that's what's being threatened. And I learned that as a minister, that people came in with the strangest things to be worried about, and that was why. It's because for some reason that particular thing, that particular tradition or whatever, that rocked their boat, and if that wasn't right, I mean, their whole system was thrown. Which isn't that bad a place to be, to have to rework it and to learn more about. But that's where it comes from.
It's a fear. It's almost a terror
Yeah.
of something that is unknown. And if
Yeah.
you can create a known, which is
Yeah.
can benefit by a lot of rules and structure, and if like there's something in those rules or structure that's not holding up, then it kicks in that deep terror of
That's right.
maybe this thing that I'm
That's right.
it has to be right, because if it's not,
right.
I'm gonna be destroyed, basically.
I'm lost. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's and it really is, the underpinning is fear.
Right.
And what are we afraid of, really? The most is being, I guess, dying is really, and not being complete when that happens. And what it's there is a this idea, I think, that people have, that they want to strive for some kind of immortality that is often pursued by becoming rich or famous, or conquering other people, or having a million children to carry on your name and your legacy.
Yeah.
And but over the shoulder, we all know death is waiting, and it can be very terrifying. So this pursuit of these types of immortality, and I think they can be also, religion can go the wrong way that way, or not the wrong way. It's just it gives the sense of immortality with heaven or hell, which are those are still places where you're dead on the earth part, but you're still going somewhere else. So there's this voice is really hard to sort of articulate, but this idea of the idea that this is going to end in some way that is unsatisfying is I think pretty terrifying to a lot of people, myself included at times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, death is scary. No doubt about it. But it's the great unknown. And these people go away, and they're gone, not here.
I was going to ask you, in your hospice work, and I've read some stuff about this. What are the people's biggest regrets that they wish they had done that they didn't do, and what really has the most meaning to them? So I'm looking at sort of both sides of, like, someone's at the end of their life and they're saying, I wish I had this, and I'm glad I did this.
To simplify it, Jesus gave us 2 commandments: love God and love people. Those are the 2 commandments. And that's basically life. Seek the spiritual, pursue, and pursue your relationships.
Yeah.
Where's the guts of life? It's in the relationships.
Yeah. Well, that's what I kind of came to when my parents were passing, which was just, I love you. That was it. There really wasn't a whole lot else.
That's right.
So there we go. We figured it out.
Yeah. In an hour. I mean, that's all.
In an hour, right? Yeah. One book and one talk in an hour. We got it down.
This is good. We should take it on the road.
So, Don, if people want to get your book, or I don't know if you have a website or any of that.
It's just on Amazon. Don Mulford.
Mulford.
Matchbooks in the Tunnel.
All right. Well, thank you for talking to me. Always great to talk about the big stuff.
Well, thank you. I'm honored and very grateful, Bob.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate it. Well, thanks so much for listening in to the show. Please visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. If you want to donate and support the show, I love you for it. And also subscribe to my YouTube channel. The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. All the episodes are also there, as well as on the website, and of course all the podcast platforms. Again, big thanks to Don Mulford. And if you want to get his book, it's on Amazon. Matchbooks in the Tunnel: How God and Others Solved My Impossible Problem, Cancer. Much appreciation to all you who've been listening into the show, and we'll see you again. Thanks.